Awesome. All right. So glad that you're here. And like I said, today we're going to talk about fucking your niche, unshaming, and unleashing your whole human in your business. And what I'm going to be going through is just talking about a little bit about what we see in the culture of coaching. And I'm just going to review a little bit around the intimacy piece, right? Because the centerpiece of my work is intimacy and what congruence and wholeness looks like, what it feels like. I'm going to share some of my stories around that. And I'm also going to share like the parts of you that have been disowned that you want to be bringing into your business and how that helps shape culture in like really amazing positive ways. And then I'm going to give you 3 ways to fuck your niche. All right. And also ways to alchemize some of the parts of us that, that are maybe uncomfortable, that we're sort of shy about bringing into our business, that kind of thing. Okay. So the common thread, like I said, running through all of what I've been teaching during this launch has been focused on intimacy wounds, the parts of us that haven't been seen or that haven't been appreciated, whether it's in our families of origin or in the collective. Maybe it's parts of us that get overwhelmed easily, or parts of us that fear that we're not good enough or that we're too much, parts that we hide because, they're connected to intense experiences of shame, etc. And as I've shared in the other trainings, we learn to survive in our environments by manipulating our energies in ways that have become habitual and patterned into the body. And of course, that doesn't just start in your childhood. That comes from ancestral lineage, and ancestors might have experienced collective intimacy wounds, things like that. So that's, that includes things that we inherit, of course, on a cellular level, beliefs and behaviors from our ancestors. And of course, while these manipulations worked in your childhood, it may be precisely what's getting in the way of your business now. That has been my experience. So what's required in your business is often shifting out of this manipulation, right? It's not intentional. It's just the way we learn to be in the world, into congruence and wholeness, right? So we're shifting out of the manipulation into congruence and wholeness. And what this looks like is telling your story in a way that really helps people relate to you and to see themselves in your journey. It looks like communicating your value without false humility, right? Sharing exactly how and why your process works. It looks like unshaming previously hidden parts of yourself and allowing them to be seen, right? The things that we think that we can't bring in because they're like, oh, people are not going to like them because you don't like them. And releasing perfection and embracing your fallibility, your humanity. Sometimes that's messiness, right? Because humanity is just messy by design. So I want to get into a little bit more about congruence and wholeness because it's something that I'm really passionate about. A lot of what we get taught in business is to niche down, right? To get really specific about who we're talking to and who we want to attract. And the way we often go about it is getting really heady and mental about it. Like we have, I'm sure you've probably, filled out worksheets, with ideal client or customer avatars and things like that, right? This is not a wrong thing to do. I'm just kind of like laughing at the whole process I've been through doing that. The problem that would come up from me in doing these exercises is that I had several ideal clients and that it would be really difficult for me to just focus on one person. Like there was a way that I just couldn't, my brain would not do that. And, when I would write an email, for example, one day I would be talking to this favorite client and the next day I would be talking to another favorite client. And this negatively impacted my messaging by being all over the place and unfocused. So we do, in a way, have to get really focused about who we want to serve. But when we get into we get really into showing up online, it's not that important. And some people find the doing the client avatar exercise really helpful, but we can also overcomplicate it. And I'm going to share with you what worked for me and why it makes attracting your ideal client much simpler, or ideal clients much simpler. And I want to first talk about like the general culture that I see in the coaching industry, because I want to paint a bigger picture, because it always is about the bigger picture for me. I want to put things in context. Again, my work isn't just about getting you the results you want, but it is about a bigger collective goal of how we show up in the world, how we show up in a business, in our businesses, how we change culture. And a lot of what we saw over the last few years in the industry, in the coaching industry, was a little bit of, what some people call vanity marketing. It was basically a giant popularity contest in which we recreated like this high school cafeteria scenario, right? You had people, coaches charging for access to their space. And the way they showed up in their marketing was like, hey, if you come on here and if you come on here, then you're going to get to be like me, right? And so nobody did this with malicious intent. There was just this energy of being able to purchase your way to the popular kids table. And because that was the predominant energy that's been going around, there's still some of that, as you see. But the way people were showing up was in this sort of Instagram curated way that was, in a way for me, deceptive, right? Because it's leaving pieces out of the experience. And because that was the predominant energy, it really preyed upon the vulnerable parts of us that want to belong. I know that I have a part of me that really wants to belong. And I really do want to be part of the popular kids table, because I'm awkward as fuck and have had difficulty owning that part of myself. And so there's that part that wants to escape our experience. We want to escape our experience of feeling like an outsider. And so that kind of marketing prays to that vulnerable part. And so what people experience real investment trauma when they didn't get the transformational results they wanted, when they were still awkward, or when they still had experiences of not feeling like they belong. And none of these containers were really fully grounded in the reality, in the repeatable processes that really helped people meet themselves in the challenging parts of their personality, their humanity, right? The real struggles. And this was all an expression of the collective shadow of hierarchies and exploitation and, frankly, narcissism, because what was happening was that we were sort of gaslighting people's reality by not showing the whole picture, by not really taking full ownership of like what's really going on behind the scene. There's a lot of successful coaches that were hella burnt out and portraying this picture that they weren't. And so what I'm bringing in here is a shift to that, is a complete 180 to that. And this is what we're seeing. This is what like people are hungry for now. People really want the truth. People are tired of being told that what they're experiencing isn't real, or that they can attain this fabulous life without the messy parts, right? So we have to integrate the messy parts. And there's a real hunger for truth, right? There's a real hunger for authenticity and getting really deep into the swampy parts of like, okay, what does this really fucking look and feel like? So this encompasses who we are at the most fundamental level, right? As humans, it's how we be with ourselves. Like, what's the shit that comes up in our relationship with ourselves, with one another? And how do we manage ourselves, right? In our imperfection and messiness, not only in business, obviously, but in our relationships and in our lives. That's the stuff that we're hungry for right now. And part of that truth that we're so hungry for is incorporating your shadow as part of your business, because your shadow is part of your wholeness, right? Shadow forms because there are parts of us that are unseen, unappreciated, right? We try to gain control and power in powerless or really overwhelming situations. And so those become part of our shadow, but it's not that they're wrong or bad, right? We think we have the schema that they're wrong or bad, but they're actually part of our wholeness and part of our light. So it's not something to be gotten rid of. It's not something to be uninvited. And I want you to answer some questions for me in the comments. If you're here, if you're watching, I want you to answer, who did you have to be in your family of origin in order to be loved? I want you to answer that question. And then I want you to answer, who were you not allowed to be? And what parts of you, this is the third question, what parts of you have you disowned? Disowned meaning having made wrong, discarded, pushed down, avoiding maybe. So the first question, who did you have to be in order to be loved? This is what I call your social mask, right? This is what most people show on the outside. This is sort of the Instagram ready face. And, a lot of times it's either very powerful or like in control and in command. Oftentimes it's like very loving and sweet and I'll help you. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm spiritual, I am unbothered. I'm unbothered by my humanness. Right. And so none of those are really the complete picture, right? They're sort of a distortion of reality. Although they have like the very true parts, right? Like that part of you that is powerful, right? It's just not the whole story. And people can't access the real us when we're in our masks. So the question to who were you not allowed to be? These are the parts that you're being called to bring into your business. Right? These are the parts that you're being invited to step into as part of your spiritual journey. And the parts of you that you have disowned, these are aspects of your shadow and what makes you absolutely magnetic. It's what makes you like, the shadow is juicy. There's a lot of sexual energy in the shadow, right? It's just really, really awesome. Okay. And I'm seeing some of the comments here. Yeah, having to be the good girl. Totally. Very, very common for those of us that have been socialized as female, right? And, the parts that have been disowned are the parts that need the most attunement and permission to be part of our business and part of our lives, part of our relationships, right? And oftentimes the archetypes that I work with are, and this is like, I have to credit Amy Lorbody, who has a whole business centered around these three archetypes. The parts that need the most permission are the bitch, the witch, and your whore, right? Bitch meaning the part of you that is boundary, the part of you that has a hard edge, the part of you that is a little bit like maybe off-putting, maybe a little bit rough, right? But it's a part that is also very strong. Your witch is your spiritual energy, your spiritual gifts, your intuition, right? The parts of us that know shit without knowing why we know it or how we know it, because a lot of us have witch wounding, right? It's been made wrong, or it's been like, oh yeah, how do you know that? Or you don't know what you're talking about, right? So it's gaslit, it's downplayed, it's ignored. And then there's whore energy, which is our sexual power, right? Which is also like, it's all one thing, but separating it out just to be able to get clear on like, these are the pieces often that we don't bring into our businesses. And I share the story a lot because at the beginning of COVID, when we first went into lockdown, I was already in the process of, developing my business and moving things more in the online space. So the timing worked out really well. But I was seeing a healer because, I've been doing a lot of spiritual writing. I've been going through a lot of spiritual changes and alchemy. And so the spiritual writing that I was doing was really like, I wasn't really incorporating my shadow at that time. And even though I had done a lot of shadow work, I just wasn't really bringing it in because I think, well, who wants to see that? And one of the healers that I was working with at the time, the first thing he said to me when we got on the call together, he's like, your shadow's very angry. And I was like, I know, because I wasn't bringing that part of myself into my business. I wasn't talking about that. I wasn't showing that aspect of myself. I was showing myself more as this sort of serene type, again, which I am, but I have all of these other, we're all multidimensional people. So, so let me catch up to my thought here. Yes. So then I began to sort of like incorporate it more. And, this happens over time because, we take these steps in our business to bring these parts of us, but we kind of do it like very slowly, like, oh, is it okay to say this? And we sort of put it out there and then we're like, all right, I hope it lands okay. And then we come back and we do it again and we do it again, right? And this is part of the practice of being in business, is continually showing up and doing those courageous things, saying the courageous things before anybody else is willing to say them, or say the thing that nobody else is willing to say yet, right? And by, leaders go first, right? You step in and you do the thing. And so, I went from, in my journey over the last couple of years, I've moved from this spiritual mask to, maybe more competence, and now like embracing more my mess, talk about whatever, right? Like it's been a process of really meeting myself in the places that I get really scared, or the parts of me that have felt shame for those parts, right? And really releasing that. We have to let go of the parts of us, of the belief that no one will like us if we show these parts. And shame is a very, very powerful controlling mechanism, right? Shame can't exist without fear. Shame is, I think in the last class, I talked about shame is something that you learned about you. It's not of you. It is something that was used to control you. And it's not an emotion, it's an experience. And when shame gets activated, it's really, really deep in our nervous system. And there's a whole emergency response that your body goes through. And it's a lot of the reason why, even doing racial justice work, like people don't want to be bad, right? And so we don't want to say, oh, I'm racist, but we all are because we grow up in the system, but nobody is really even wanting to admit that because it brings up just feelings of shame, and this belief that we're bad for being this way, right? Instead of just like accepting like, yeah, like this is shit. I have these thoughts, I have these feelings, right? These experiences come up for me. So unshaming is a process of shape-shifting out of fear into curiosity, wanting to get to know how that part is serving you, right? For example, I have a history of binge eating. And, if I'm in a shaming place, I'm going to be like, oh God, I'm just like, I'm doing it again. I'm eating too much. I'm doing harm to myself. Why am I doing this? Right. And I'm beating myself up. But when I'm unshaming, when I'm shape-shifting into an unshaming place, I want to get really curious about that part. Like, how is that part serving me? Well, maybe it's a part of me that is like, fuck it. I don't care. I feel really free and I just want to be free and I don't want to have to think about my diet anymore. It's a place where I get to relax and I get to just have pleasure, right? And maybe I'm like, this food feels like my best friend and I feel companionship, right? So it's like, let's look at how it's actually working for you. Let's look at, how it's serving you and where the pleasure is, right? So, yeah. So all of this to say, don't try to make yourself less bitchy, more palatable, or less complicated than you are, right? People just aren't having it anymore. And let me add, the right people aren't having it anymore. Your people, the clients who are so ready for the transformational work that you offer, they're not having it anymore. They can see through the bullshit. The people who are still willing to be manipulated are not your people, right? They're not ready. And you want all of these parts of you, right? The witch, the bitch, the whore, to be in service of your messaging, not against it. So you have to not only be yourself, but you have to be yourself from a place of service. And this is the tricky part, right? You can own your shadow, but you have to own it with your heart. You have to hold your shadow with compassion. And that's what happens when it's integrated. It can be like, oh yeah, you're here. All right, what do you want to do? Right? You've got an awesome relationship with it. It's, it can be here. It's not like, oh, I don't know about you, right? Because then there's already like fear involved. And this is the place that I like to lead from, because this communicates a vibration of safety to your people. I just wrote a post this morning about like, we attract our clients by being congruent, right? In the same way that we attract a partner. The partner that I want is somebody who really owns their shit, who is so like on top of all of their defenses and patterns and can just name them. And when they're withholding from me, they'll come up to me and be like, I want to withhold from you. I'm pissed at you and I want to withhold from you. And that like immediately gets my attention, because I'm just like, oh yeah, then it's not coming at me like sideways and in a projected way. Then I just get to be like, oh, right. And I feel safe when you're owning your shit and I'm owning mine, right? When you welcome it in yourself, when you welcome all of those parts of you to be here, you welcome it in other people, and people want to feel safe. They want to feel safe in your presence. So, and this is, we're talking about attachment, right? So we're talking about relationships and safety and trust, right? All of that communicates that to your clients. We're all looking for accurate mirrors to our own experience. We all want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be met where we are, right? We want to be understood. And the more open you are to expressing those parts of yourself, the more permission we give other people to do that. Like, I attracted queer and kinky people before I even put it out, right? Even before I put it out explicitly that was what I was about. Like, people can already feel you. So don't try to hide it, because they already people read energy. So they just know without you telling them. And, to be really, really honest, we don't always hit that place of congruence and wholeness. This is not like, oh, I'm congruent now, I'm done. No, it's sometimes we're a little off, right? And so we recalibrate, it's all part of the process. Like, we say something and like, the energy of that didn't feel quite right. Let me backpedal a little bit, and then we do it again. We show up again. So, all right. So I'm just going to look at the comments for a second. Yeah. You couldn't be your deep feeling self-sensitive soul. Yes, that's exactly right. A lot of us can't be really sensitive. Some of us weren't allowed to really be like in our hearts. We had to sort of be tougher than what we actually were, or tough in a different way, let's say. All right. So excited for your comments. And I'll respond to your questions when I get off the live. So definitely ask them. So these are 3 ways you can start fucking your niche. So the first one is being an accurate mirror. Perfection is the enemy of impact and sales. What draws your people to you is your humanity, right? So one of the important aspects of your job is to be a beacon of radical permission. And you do that by changing your relationship to the parts of you that you fear are too vulnerable, too messy, too awkward, too ridiculous, or dangerous and destructive, right? And we often project this out to other people. Like, we'll put something out there and then we'll be like, oh, people think that people are judging me because da 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 da, or people are not liking my content because they think I'm too awkward. Oftentimes that is just your belief about you, right? So it's always bring it back to yourself. It's like, how do I already believe that I'm too awkward, or that I'm not smart, or that I'm being too much or too little of this or that? So when it's safe for you to hold challenging parts of yourself on the inside, right? Your inner ecosystem, people feel safe in your presence. And that safety is currency, right? Like when I say it's currency, I mean that in both ways. I mean that in the energetic way, right? In the vibration, like in the ways that nervous systems kind of like calibrate or sort of co-regulate. And I also mean that in the concrete sense of like, yes, people are willing to pay you cash if they feel safe in your presence. So the second way you can start fucking your niche is assume intimacy. When you create content, write it, like whether you're doing it writing, right? Write for a dear friend who loves you, right? Imagine that you're writing it for someone that's already in your life, who cares about you, who understands you, and wants to know more either about you, about the work that you do, and maybe can actually benefit from the work that you do. So this makes it so much simpler because it enables you to hit a certain tone that is like a vibrational frequency for people, right? Like people are going to feel like, oh, she's talking to me, or she wants to connect to me, right? And this tone can be warm and relational, even if it has other bitchier elements to it, for example, right? Like maybe, you're a little bit of a, like me, like a little bit of a Puerto Rican mom where I'm just like, what? Wait, pick up your plate. Come on, let's go. What are you doing? I'm a little bit like that. So it's like, there's warmth there, but there's a little bit of a, come on. So the third way you can start fucking your niche is clearly communicate your values. When you're making a list of the quality you want your partner to have, for example, it's never about their height, or hopefully not about their height or the things that they like to do. What's really going to be a better match for you is somebody who's aligned to your values, right? The really deep stuff, from the personal to the political. Maybe you're wanting someone who's done liberation work. Maybe you want somebody who is a wellness professional, right? Who really understands the psyche. Let people know what you like and what you don't like. Be very clear about like your likes and dislikes, what you're up for, what you're not up for, because those values communicate a boundary, right? You do want to be pushing people away with your content at the same time that you're attracting them, right? So when you start stepping into your truth more and communicating that more clearly, there are going to be people that go away, and there may be a party that feel like, oh my God, where's everybody going? Let them go. Let them go, because this is sort of an alignment process that can be really, really scary, because, we feel people like moving away. We're like, don't go. But there are other people who are like, oh, wait, oh, that's cool. What are you doing? That's awesome, right? So we just want to trust that process, and trusting the process is sometimes just about like talking ourselves down and meeting that part of us that is kind of like scared of losing people, or maybe being rejected or abandoned, things like that. So here's how I help you dissolve shame so that you can be an accurate mirror and congruent beacon of permission for your fuck yes clients. So you want to be developing a strong, non-judgmental observer self, so you can shift into curiosity and radical approval of everything you experience. What do I mean by that? When we're in shame, our identity is attached to a story. And that's why it feels so awful. That's why we defend against it, because we believe the thoughts that we're having are real. And so developing a strong, non-judgmental observer means being able to observe your experience in a little bit of a detached way, while also allowing yourself to experience it, right? So you're observing the narrative your brain is telling you, and letting yourself experience sort of the muckiness that shame feels like in your body. It just feels like there's a dead rat in your basement and it's smelling up the whole house. That's what it feels like to me. I'm just like, whoa. So you want to be, as you're observing the narratives in your brain and allowing that mucky sensation to move through your body, you want to be anchoring in all the evidence to the contrary, right, of what your brain is telling you, right? Your brain is telling you, oh, you are like, you're a shitty mom. You don't know what you're doing. You're a failure, like, right, all of this stuff. Or like, what did you just do? That was so stupid, right? Whatever shame is telling you. Okay, well, what is evidence to the contrary? Well, I'm not a sucky mom because my kids love me and because I, receive support here and there. My friends have told me that they really like the way that I parent and my kids are really healthy and right? That kind of thing. You just want to be really anchoring in that. And feeling the sensation in your body without believing the story uncouples the shame conditioning and allows you to permanently release it from your nervous system. So it's like, shame is not an experience to be sat with, right? I often talk about like, oh, we sit with our emotions. Shame is not an emotion. It's a learned experience. It's a conditioned experience. And so you can permanently remove it from your nervous system and body, right? So you have more safety in your body to be fully yourself, more permission to be your freaky, kinky, witchy, bitchy self, and more magnetism for the people who want to give themselves permission to do that too, right? And so I want to say to you as we close today, I'm so excited for the people that showed up live. I'm going to say this on repeat until it lands, right? There's no part of you that is wrong. There's no part of you that's wrong. I don't care how awful you think it is. I don't care. It's not. So even the part of you that you struggle with, that you think you would be a better person without, no, that's a bunch of bullshit, right? You can own that part and have it be part of your inner ecosystem, right? This feels so fun to share with you. I just want to end today by, just talking about a little bit, like, how do we share ourselves when it feels scary? Like, how do we offer this to online, right? In whatever way. We do it with small, courageous, aligned steps, right? We allow ourselves to be uncomfortable and we manage our discomfort using pleasure by soothing ourselves, by breathing, by moving our bodies, each time a little bit braver. We show a little bit more, right? We soothe the fear that comes up and calm our system, get support, right? And this is the long game of entrepreneurship. This is the sustainability piece. And this is how you interweave your spiritual growth with your business. Yay. So I'm going to turn off the recording